Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Cam, welcome back to the 1999 Project, where I'll be covering, well, trying to cover at least, all of the movies that came out in the year 1999. I am 2 weeks deep into this, and so far I've got one Stone Cold Classic in Varsity Blues, and a bunch of ones that definitely belong in the month of January. So it's not a total wash at this point. But going into this week, I'm only going to be covering two movies total. It was supposed to be three, but it ended up being a case where a 1998 movie kind of was thrown into it by accident. And it wasn't a case of it came out in 98 but wasn't released in America till 99. It came out in 98, period. The movie's called Still Crazy. It was directed by Brian Gleason, starred Bill Nye, Timothy Spall, and Billy Connolly. It's basically a take on a fictional rock band that broke up and came back together again. It's actually very good. It's a comedy, but it's got heart to it. It's not streaming anywhere, so I had to go to other places to see it. But I recommend you all check it out if you can find it. It's very hard to find, though. I will give it a good rating, though. It's got a lot of heart. It's funny at times. So, yeah, I won't be giving it a full-fledged review here, but definitely go out of your way to see it. But let's turn now to mainline 99 stuff. Starting off with the other half of the unofficial Martin Luther King Jr. duology of 1999, Selma, Lord Selma. Selma Lord Selma was directed by Charles Burnett, and it was made for television through Disney, their label The Wonderful World of Disney. And it starred Clifton Powell and Journey S Smollett. Again, the Dave Chappelle thing kind of ruined it for me, but Journey Smollett. And this is based specifically around the time in which Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was trying to get voting rights done and just before the March on Selma. This movie follows a young girl named Cheyenne Webb, and she also wrote the book that this movie was based on. She was incredibly young when these events took place, but as a child, she took part in the March on Selma and forwarded that civil rights movement along. Earlier this month, I covered Our Friend Martin, which basically devolved into a Captain Planet episode. It wasn't terrible, but I was just sitting there thinking to myself, yeah, that's what Martin Luther King Jr.'s story needs, time travel and an It's a Wonderful Life-esque plot. It was just odd. Thankfully, Selma Lord Selma doesn't go down that route and goes down a more traditional biopic route, which was all for the better because I thought this movie was very good. I thought Journey Smollett was the best part of the movie by a lot. She was very young at the time, but I thought her role was very well handled. The movie, for being a made-for-TV movie made by Disney, was actually a little bit more hardcore than I was expecting. The movie actually has a scene where people get tear gassed and Cheyenne ends up getting tear gassed, and it's brutal to watch. Like she's trying to get the gas out of her eyes, but she can't because it'd make it worse, and her parents are trying to get it out of her eyes with a rag. It makes you really sad to see. It tugs at the heartstrings, and that whole aspect was rough to watch, but that was the point. And in terms of filmmaking, it was handled very well. I thought Clifton Powell did a good job playing Dr. King. I feel like the movie did a really good job of staying focused on these whole specific events surrounding Selma leading up to the March on Selma. There is nothing crazy about it. It just feels very much like a biopic if it were made like, say, today. I feel like the March on Selma, though, would make for a very compelling, like, HBO-style miniseries, though. I'd watch it. I feel like any inkling of this movie being more over the top with certain characters, especially the racist sheriff, was definitely more of a lean towards trying to capture what was unfortunately going down at the time. So, with the context of the history of that era, I'm a little more lenient on that because normally I'd be like, okay, who talks like this seriously? But unfortunately, that was what a lot of African Americans went through in that region at that time. It's very sad, but it was what it was. Probably the most frustrating thing, not in with the exception of the tear gas scene, was a scene in which this woman was trying to apply for the right to vote, and the test was she had to basically guess how many jelly beans were in this big old jar. Like, no one could have accurately guessed that, and she rightfully calls it out as a sham, but the sheriff is like, well, you can't do it, so you can't vote, so sucks to be you. It was a frustrating scene. And again, for a movie that was made for TV, it was honestly more mature and handled this material in a more mature way than I was expecting. I'm going to give this a great rating. If you can find this movie, it's on YouTube, so go and watch it. I do highly recommend it. But now let us take a steeple dip in quality and talk about easily the most boring movie that I have covered so far in this project. I say so far, Gloria.
If you wanted me to, I could be your mother.
Gloria.
Gloria was directed by Sidney Lumet, this Sidney Lumet, and this Sidney Lumet, and the movie starred Sharon Stone as a woman named Gloria. She has ties to the mob. Like, they don't give the mob a name, it's just the mob. You know the one I'm talking about. The movie came out in 99. The Sopranos debuted the same year, so I'm sure there's some loose connections in there somewhere. To make a long story short, Gloria ends up meeting this little boy who steals a disc with basically every dirty little secret that the mob has. And so it is up to Gloria to keep the boy safe after she has a change of heart, after realizing that these mob guys are not exactly the most upstanding citizens. Oh, and in my research, let's all hang our heads in shame. This was George C. Scott's last film role. Shame, really. Also, in my research, I found this movie is actually a remake of a movie of the same name directed by John Cassavetes. I did not know that this was a thing, and now I really want to watch Gloria, the 1980 version, because honestly, from the sounds of it, it was probably 1,000 times better than this movie. And let me just say that if I seem like I'm being harsh towards this movie, it's not technically like bad in terms of the technical side of things. This movie was just boring, and sitting at an hour 45, it was still a chore to get through. Sharon Stone tries to do this New York accent, and it just comes across as completely artificial. I didn't buy her New York accent in the slightest. Honestly, the best actor in the movie is the kid. He at least tries in certain scenes. You've seen much better mob characters. It's a shame that George C. Scott is in this because he is at least trying, but like, why would he accept a role like this? I have no idea. And movie, what it really boils down to is that I've seen a review that talks about how this movie feels like they're just doing the beats of Gloria, the Cassavetes version, without any of the heart. I have not seen the Cassavetes version, but I'm willing to definitely understand where they're coming from on this one because this movie just it feels like several other mobster movies just crammed into one. In 2012, there was a Jason Statham movie called Safe about someone with a past in a life of crime who is trying to go the straight and narrow after he loses everything. But he encounters this young Chinese girl who knows everything about everything. She has an eidetic memory. She knows everyone that the triad pays off, on what day and when, names, dates, ghost sites, who's cooperating with us abroad, every operation. And it's up to Jason Statham to protect her. Even though that movie came out in 2012 and stars Jason Statham, that movie with a similar premise to Gloria was far more entertaining than Gloria. Because at least with Safe, there is a general sense of this person trying to keep this young girl safe. Here, it's like this. It's like every other scene. It's like Sharon Stone yelling at someone, or these mob guys going gabagool, or whatever it is. It just feels very repetitive. I'm very much tempted to give this a horrid rating, but because of the late great George C. Scott, and I don't want to disrespect his name too much, I'm just going to say the movie is pretty forgettable. I definitely want to watch the Cassavetes version now and see if that is any better. I imagine it is. But that is all for this week. What did you all think of any of the movies I've talked about? Let me know in the comments. Love to read what you have to say. And stay tuned for next week where I'll be covering, among other things, my first decom in this series, Xenon, and another movie from the wonderful world of Disney, A Saintly Switch, along with a certain movie from MTV called She's All That.